time now for the press review with Deeptika Laurent. Good to see you, Deepti. And we're going to start talking about the mass anti-independence march in Barcelona yesterday.
That's right. The anti-independents are waking up. That's what Libération, the left-leaning paper, says on its front page. Hundreds of thousands of them marched en masse in Barcelona yesterday. Libé's editors say, I quote, "At a time when Europe is rocked by Brexit, any other strategy apart from dialogue and negotiations between the pro and anti-independent movements would be catastrophic, both for the economy and democracy." Now, we're seeing a similar headline from Le Figaro, the right-leaning paper, this idea of anti-independents waking up and starting to march for their rights as well. This is Spain enters a, quote, high-risk week with the Catalan regional leader set to address Parliament tomorrow. Now, in its editorial, Le Figaro says, no one will win from this crisis, not Catalonia, not Spain, certainly not Europe. And I quote, let's hope the calls we heard from demonstrators yesterday for wisdom are heeded too.
Okay, well, the Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy has given an interview to Le Figaro and El País, the Spanish paper. What did he have to say?
That's right. The papers interviewed the Spanish Prime Minister yesterday for its Sunday edition, and the Prime Minister is very, very firm about what he believes and what his government is willing to accept. His message was very clear if you read the extracts republished by Le Figaro. Spanish unity will not be negotiated. That's what he says. The government is very clear that it will do everything to prevent Catalan independence. He says until there's a return to, quote, legality, there'll be no negotiations with the Catalans. So we're really seeing just how entrenched both sides are in how they see this conflict. And this is really well illustrated by Willem, a cartoonist for the French paper Libération. As you see, the Spanish and independentists are facing off here with the Spanish shouting, it's time for dialogue, and the Catalans saying, no, it's time for dialogue. Essentially, they're fighting about agreeing on the same issue.
Okay, well, let's move on to another big story now. 50 years since Che Guevara died, the Marxist revolutionary leader, and L'Humanité, the communist paper, is paying homage to Guevara.
That's right, an adoring homage, it must be said, from L'Humanité, the communist paper. They've re-quoted the Cuban revolutionary on their front page. I quote, "The present is full of fights, the future belongs to us," a quote that became just as part of popular culture as Che Guevara himself. I quote L'Humanité's editors, "Beyond the marketing of his image as a fighter with his beret and deep gaze, Ernesto Guevara remains a key symbol of the fight against the weak, of the fight of the weakest against the most powerful." And it's especially relevant now at a time where, I quote, "The wheels of history are turning in the other direction, and this time it's the rich who are waging war on the poor."
Now, speaking of the mass marketing of Che Guevara's image, the website Lobs is looking at how his portrait ended up on all those T-shirts and mugs and magnets, etc.
That's right. It's really interesting, actually, this article from Lobs, and I certainly learned something this morning. I'm sure Che Guevara is probably rolling in his grave knowing that his image became one of the most popular capitalist exploits in the 20th century and even today. Now, this photo that you see there has become very familiar. It's been slapped on every tourist contraption possible. It's also become the focus of memes in the 21st century. Now, you may not know this, but that photo was taken on March the 5th, 1960 in Havana, when Guevara was attending a funeral for tens of victims of an explosion of a French cargo ship a few days earlier. Now, there's nothing celebratory about this photo at all. And in fact, the man who took it, Alberto Corda, was a fervent communist revolutionary. He'd only taken 2 photos of Che that day. And Lopes explains that he only demanded copyright for the image in 2000 when a vodka company tried to use it for a mass marketing campaign. He actually earned $50,000 from that lawsuit and donated it to the Cuban medical system. To this day, he's never profited not even 1 cent from that photo.
Oh, okay. Now, finally, just a few weeks ago, we had Paris without cars, and yesterday there was Paris without clothes. Deepti, what's this about?
I had no idea idea about this, it must be said. Naked, we can do it all. That's it. That title from this Parisian article.
It's catchy.
It's catchy. The photo is pretty evocative as well, let's say. Under one of Paris's most famous bridges, the Pont Alexandre, you'll know it, Rochelle, nudists held a multi-activity day yesterday to raise awareness and defend their hopes of getting a nudist complex in Paris. There was a bar, a barbershop, games, singing classes, even a knitting workshop. Everyone was naked in the hopes of de-dramatizing nudity and, I quote, appeasing fantasies, chasing taboos, and welcoming naturism for what it is, a philosophy about living together and respecting each other without the social taboos of clothing.
Who needs clothes? How very French. Deepti, thank you so much for that. Deepti Catalan there with the press review.